Hey friends, today is March 5th. It's the 10th day of Russian war against Ukraine. I'll tell you about what's going on in the field, but also some of the global processes that are going on, which I think will shape the history of the world in the future. These are important things. As far as the action goes, there hasn't been much action from the Russian side. No troop advances, no shelling of cities in the morning, but of course the shelling of living quarters and apartment buildings resumed in the afternoon. We think that in the morning the Russian troops were trying to regroup. They have been having problems with their supply lines, reinforcements, and logistics, and we're thinking that they were trying to change their tactics and fix those problems. So you may remember that huge column we talked about. Was it like 3 or 4 days ago that they saw moving towards Kyiv? That hasn't been moving for quite a while, and the answer is, and the question why, is because they have been having quite a bit of logistical problems. The fuel train that was supposed to bring fuel to that column has been destroyed by a Ukrainian drone. So they could not reanimate it. So what's happening there is that Ukrainian army is trying to take out those pieces of machinery and troops out one by one. So that column has sort of lost its potential. Yesterday was also important because the NATO security summit was held, which was disappointing because Ukraine was hoping that NATO would close its skies. It did not happen. Instead, the council voted to buy fuel for Ukrainian armies. President Zelensky was quite irked about it, rightfully so, and he said something like, well, how many liters of Ukrainian blood do you need to pay for the fuel? Which I thought was a good point. He was quite angry about that, and we talked about why that is important and what it would do for the future of this war. So that's disappointing. I saw one of the councils from Estonia talking about it, and he said, we were voting for it, but the rules in the NATO councils are such that if one country is against it, the question is being being pushed out to another day. So, and that's unfortunate. What's important is what's happening in Russia itself as well. We're seeing that economic hit had been hard. A lot of automotive companies have quit Russia. Quite a bit of electronics companies have quit. Today we heard that IBM is quitting Russian market. We're already seeing a lot of people losing their jobs or going out to protest in one of the plants in Russia because they're seeing the economic hit. So what's happening is Russia being isolated economically. We're also seeing that Russia is being isolated culturally and with sports. Well, apart from Netflix and Disney quitting Russian markets, which is not here nor there, but we're seeing that a lot of the world tournaments, soccer, volleyball, tennis, they're all quitting Russia. A lot of teams, soccer teams are refusing to play Russia in their playoffs and in the tournaments. So we're seeing that sport is being isolated as well. Another important thing that's happening in Russia, that they have accepted this law against fakes, and they're tightening their grip on the freedom of expression, on free speech, and we're seeing that there are a few of the independent media that was in Russia. So, for example, the channel called Dozhd, which means rain, they have stopped operating. There's others. Radio Echo Moskvy, which means Echo Moscow, and it was a sort of independent radio station, but not really independent. They were part of the propaganda, but they have been taken off air as well. Another Russian independent media source called Kolta, they have stopped working because of this law. Because, for example, this law says that what's happening in Ukraine today cannot be called a war. It's only a special operation. So that's one of the things that they cannot abide by. We're seeing that Western media is deciding to stop working in Russian markets because of the law on fakes, and of course, fake as defined by the Russian government. So the list I'm seeing today is CNN, CBS, Bloomberg News, ABC News, BBC, and CBS. They're all stopping their broadcasting to Russia, which, as I said, with sanctions means that the more Russia is isolated, the more the people inside of it become radicalized. I'm seeing this. Thought propagated in the West and even in Ukraine that it's really Putin who's being radical, and Putin is poisoning Russia, but the people are just victims. And looking at some of the bloggers I'm following in Russia and how they're describing the impending doom, the economic collapse, their cultural, their travel is going to stop. They cannot go anywhere. It sort of makes me kind of cringe a little bit because, I mean, they haven't done anything, right? It's their president. But if you trust Russian media, there's not anybody who refuted this, Putin's approval rating is about like 80%. There's also another poll that has been done. This is with video as well of people, in Moscow, around Moscow. Do you support the special operation of Russia in Ukraine? And over 90% said yes. So my question is, like, are you really a victim if you support everything Putin's doing? So although I realize there's a bunch of people in Russia who do not support this, who understand that the war is purely trying to conquer Ukrainian territories, trying to intimidate the West. But do you support this or no? If you don't support it, go out in the streets and protest it. And I do realize that Russian government is brutal, suppressing those protests. But that's the price you have to pay for freedom. That's the price that Ukraine paid in 2004 and then in 2013 and 14. The government, the President Yanukovych back then tried to do that. There were some brutal beatings as well. But as Reagan said, I think it was Reagan, right? That freedom is never free. You have to the price of freedom is eternal vigilance. You have to make sure you're not losing. You have to make sure that your government is not usurping it. So, on the one hand, yes, of course, Putin is the perpetrator. But if it happens with the agreement of Russian people, then you sort of have to bear the consequences. I do not like seeing isolation of Russia. I do not like seeing that mass media is quitting Russia, because all that's left is propaganda. I don't like seeing IBM or Intel, Nvidia leaving Russia, because that's international relations and people are losing jobs. And when people are losing jobs, they're being radicalized, which means that they can go either way. They can rebel and topple Putin, which I think we all agree is what we would like to see happen. But this can also push them in another direction where they rally behind them, and then that's not the effect that we would like. So another big news this morning, Ukraine was hoping to evacuate Mariupol. So Mariupol has been surrounded under heavy attack, and they finally said, well, we're going to evacuate the population, about 200,000 people. They had made agreements with the Russian army and the Ministry of Defense in Russia to create a green corridor in order to be able to do that. They've started preparing everything, putting people on buses, but as soon as they started moving, the Russian army started shooting again. And of course, Ministry of Defense of Russia said, well, it's because Ukrainian nationalists have violated the silence mode, so we started shooting back. Of course, bullshit. Mariupol was trying to evacuate, didn't happen because Russians started shooting at the green corridor. That's despicable. We're seeing 3 cities, which is interesting, in Ukraine: Kherson, Melitopol, Berdyansk, and one other that I forget. They have had Russian army go into them and take over government buildings, but they have been pouring out in the streets protesting them. And in one case, in the city called Energodar, they had actually left because of the protests. So this is Ukrainians, you know. This is a very, very proud moment because people do not have guns here. Civilians don't have guns, but they have come out in masses and pushed out Russian forces in one side, in one case, and others they were not intimidated. And in one of these cities, the Russian forces started shooting in the sky first, but then shooting at the crowd, and one person was, I think they had their leg shot through or something. They lived. So 2 bombers have been shot down over Ukraine today, and I think both pilots lived. One has been taken into custody, and both have been taken into custody, and one is on video talking about what he was doing there. Turns out this is the guy, he's a Russian pilot who was fighting in Syria. There's a picture of him in Assad. So these guys, they know what they're doing. They're all telling this story that we didn't know what was happening. We were out on training, and turns out it was in Ukraine. If I had an inclination to believe them at first, they're just using the same words. They have been taught to say this. They're just lying. Okay, so round 3 of negotiations is going to happen on Monday. So we'll see what happens with that. But again, I'm not holding my breath, and you shouldn't either. 2 things on political diplomatic front happened today, which were interesting. One is that the president of Turkey, Erdogan, he is inviting Putin to come to Turkey to talk to him. They've been talking on the phone today, and he wants to negotiate the peace process. I'm not sure why he thinks he can, but anything helps. And also today, you know, that site Flight Radar, which tracks all the airplanes in the world. So we're seeing that a Russian diplomatic plane had left today for the United States and landed in Washington. So something's happening there. I hope something good. So and then finally, one piece of, I'm guessing, optimistic news as we're moving into this prolonged war of attrition at this point, I guess, is that there is a international research agency based in Holland called Bellingcat. And Bellingcat, they have been working on big cases. So, for example, the Malaysian flight that was shot over Ukraine, they were the main agency who investigated it and presented the report to the European Commission. So they're saying that a Russian army, it nearly exhausted all of their supplies that they have prepared for this war, and tomorrow on March 6th they will not have any more of these supplies. So they're going to have to try to fix their supply lines, fix their logistics if they can, because obviously they haven't counted on the war to take this long. So, all right, friends, I thank you for your attention. I thank you for your questions. I know I've been promising a video to answer those questions. I'll get around to it these days. As you know, those of you who know me personally, we're moving around with my team. And so we're here in one country in Europe. We're moving out to another one. So these things have been difficult, but I'm working on it. Thanks, and please continue to share if you find this interesting, because Ukrainian perspective in these things is important. There's no news that is objective. There's no source of information that is objective. So I'm telling you what this war looks like from a Ukrainian standpoint. All right, bye.